There are four important hormones that control the menstrual cycle, and I would like now to explain what they do and the effects of these hormones. And what I've got over here is I've named the hormones in these orange boxes: FSH, estrogen, LH, and progesterone. These are the four hormones. And in parentheses, the place where they are made. So FSH, for example, is made in the pituitary gland in the brain. Down here in the green boxes, I've mentioned the effects of these hormones. And I'm now going to explain this slide by drawing arrows which indicate basically what the hormones do. And what we do is we start off with the hormone FSH. The name of this is an abbreviation, and FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. It is produced by the pituitary gland in the brain and is transported over the blood, of course, because that's how hormones are transported. It's transported over the blood to the ovary, and there it causes a maturing of a follicle and an ovum inside the follicle. What does this mean? An ovum is a different name for saying egg cell, and FSH basically tells the follicle to produce an egg cell. And a follicle is essentially a little bubble inside the ovary in which the egg cell matures. So I'm now going to draw an arrow down like this, and because FSH stimulates the maturing of an egg cell, it's a positive effect. I'm going to draw a little plus over here. FSH, however, also tells the cells of the follicle to produce the next hormone called estrogen. So in that sense, FSH has a double effect on the ovary. It stimulates egg cell production and also estrogen production. Therefore, I'm also going to draw a little plus over here. And so we see that one hormone is able to turn on another hormone. This estrogen produced by the ovary now has an interesting effect on the ovary itself. So I'm drawing an arrow back from estrogen to estrogen, because the estrogen, which is made by the ovary, tells the ovary to become more FSH sensitive, and as a consequence to produce more estrogen. And this is like a positive feedback system. More estrogen means more FSH sensitivity, which means that even more estrogen is produced. And the purpose of this positive feedback loop is to quickly increase the level of estrogen inside the blood. And now the level of estrogen increases, and now what effect does this have? It repairs the endometrium, and the endometrium is the inside lining of the uterus. It has to repair, or rather regenerate it, because the endometrium was lost during the previous menstrual bleeding. And it was basically sloughed off and was lost, and it's now being regenerated. So over here we have another positive effect. As the level of estrogen rapidly increases, this tells the pituitary gland to produce the next hormone. And so I'm drawing an arrow over here, a positive effect on the pituitary. And the hormone which the pituitary now produces is called LH. And LH stands for luteinizing hormone, and is responsible for causing ovulation. Here we started to make an egg cell, or rather to mature an egg cell in the follicle. Now, approximately 2 weeks later, the egg cell is finished and can be released in a process called ovulation, and the hormone LH is responsible for this. Plus, LH, luteinizing hormone, can also be explained by saying that it causes the formation of a corpus luteum. This is also known as the yellow body, and the corpus luteum is nothing more than a fancy way of saying an empty follicle. So we've removed the egg cell, but the remaining follicle is called the corpus luteum, and it is still good for something because the corpus luteum, the empty follicle, produces progesterone, the next hormone. Empty follicle starts to produce progesterone, and this is produced by the ovary because the corpus luteum can be found, of course, in the ovary. And progesterone level quickly goes up, and the purpose of the progesterone is now to maintain the endometrium, at least for several days until the corpus luteum breaks down. And the endometrium is now maintained and awaits the implantation of the fertilized egg cell should fertilization occur. Progesterone, however, also has a negative effect. And while the progesterone level is high, we do not need to make a new egg cell. And therefore, we have a negative feedback. So it inhibits LH production by the pituitary, and it also inhibits the production of FSH as well. So this is a negative feedback system, and when the corpus luteum breaks down, then progesterone secretion also goes down and stops, and the endometrium cannot be maintained anymore, and the menstrual bleeding starts again. And then we're basically back at the beginning. Low level of progesterone means that FSH can again be produced during the next cycle. So this is basically an overview over the events of the menstrual cycle. And what you see basically is that you have the pituitary gland and the brain basically messaging each other, sending a signal down, then it sends again a signal up to the pituitary, and so on. So that is basically the sequence of steps during the menstrual cycle.